Now we're going to do the 16 hydraulic cam followers. Okay, I've taken one apart, and that's basically the order it comes out. That part there sits on the camshaft. Hydraulically, pressure goes into there, pushes through a valve. That's another stop flap valve. It's like a flat disc, and that there is the top that pushes onto the push rod, and that's just a clip that holds it together. So I thought I would just take one apart so you could see how it looks in pieces before I actually disassemble it. So these cam followers, generally mechanics just leave them alone and they don't bother to mess with them, and they just stick them straight back in that. But in the case of having a possible contamination, like water in the oil or any other type of contamination, it's probably a good idea just to take a screwdriver, pop these clips apart. They'll take about 10 minutes per valve follower, but at least you know that what you've got is no contamination in there, no moisture or anything like that. So I've just taken the clip out with a screwdriver, and what I do is I just tap it down like that. That's the two bits, the disc that's on the bottom of that, and the cam follower. That's the push rod cup that has a little hole so that the oil can go up through to the push rods to the tappets at the top. Now what will happen is this piston inside of here, you can't hook this thing out, so I'll give it a little bit of a tap like that. But if that don't work, the best way to do that is to simply get a compressed air line and put the compressed air into it, and there's a hole at the bottom, and hydraulically push it out. There you go, now it's out. So then I can grab it. There you go, it's out. So, and that there's no more there to fall out except for a spring. There you go, spring out. Now something else you need to clean out with the compressed air line. On the bottom of that is a one-way valve. So what happens is when the oil pressure comes into the side of it, okay, it pushes outwards that way. So that's basically the area that could get jammed up with dirt. So I blow that out to make sure that valve is nice and clean. Assembly is a little bit more complicated. We'll go through that right now. Right, busy putting a hydraulic valve lifter together. After everything is nice and clean, stick that in a number 22 socket that I hold nice and tight in the vise. Don't put that thing in the vise or even with a cloth. It will crimp it and make it out of round. So put it into something like a socket, a holder. Here's the last one. I'm getting more dab hand at this now, it's getting a bit quicker. So time to wash it out. Time to blow it apart. Make sure there's nothing down at the bottom with a punch. No dirt down there. Blow it out. just blowing that ball valve out again carefully. I don't want to lose it. Right, somewhere in here. There's that part. And a little disc shim. There we go. It's clean, it's ready. Bit of oil and blow it out. Put that together, a little bit oily, not filled with oil though. Right, fill this thing up. Put the disc in. Push rod follower. Get the clip ready. Punch. And push down hard and hold it there. That's in. That's in. Okay, that's it. All finished. Now the engine's the right way up, pistons facing upwards. Time to put all the hydraulic valve followers in. Right, so after you've given all of these holes a good squirting and into the camshaft and the bottom, then it's time to oil up the roller at the back, and these are already pre-oiled, and you place them in. So that's just to make sure the bearings are the right way round. That goes in. There's 16 of them. All of these things here to stop them from twisting. That keeps the rollers around the right way so that they sit on the actual camshaft correctly. These are either way round. There's no wrong or right way round for these. They're the same either way. And the same for this side. There's no particular order, inlet or outlet valves. They're all the same. They're all identical. There we go, and I continue with all of them. Something that I do when I turned the engine over, I made sure that there was some plastic packing foam underneath the sump, because I don't really want it underneath the flywheel, because I've got to turn the engine over at some stage. So I also don't want to destroy the new paint underneath by putting it on any hard surface or even wood where it moves around. So I put it onto some foam. Because that's really where the rust starts, and it's so easy to start that rust by chipping the paint underneath. After I put the flywheel bolts on, instead of spray painting those bolts to stop rust, I've just put some grease on them, because they're really fine thread and I really don't want paint inside those threads if they're very fine. This is a new water pump, about a year old, but nevertheless I still took all those bolts off of the back of the little stainless steel cover that this thing has, cleaned out inside the impeller, and made sure inside of all of these holes here was cleaned out with a screwdriver, make sure there's no scale. But the other thing is that it needs to be kept an eye on. This is the old drive pulley that's on the front, and they get a little bit of rust, so it's a good idea to clean those up and wire brush them off or sand them where necessary, just to make sure little bits of rust don't actually come along and hit on the back of the fan belt or the serpentine belt and start chewing it up. Well, I spun that round with the very fine sanding flappy disc, and at the same time as it was spinning, it was sanding it and cleaning it up, so it looks absolutely spot on, ready to put a coat of paint on now. Okay, so this is how the water pump should look, with nice smooth surfaces around here, nicely painted up, and anywhere where the seawater is, including inside of here, I've sprayed as well, and inside around the edges of the water jacket. It's not the actual engine, so therefore that'll help protect rust from building up on the entrance and exit of the water pump. This is, by the way, the entrance where the cold seawater comes in, or fresh water depending on your application, and that's where it goes in to the block before it goes up to the cylinder head. So the water comes in here, through the block, up through the block, and out through the top where the thermostat housing is. On the back left hand side of the engine, there's an oil pressure switch and an oil pressure sender unit. That is for the gauge, to tell you what the oil pressure is. These things are only made out of thin metal, and inside there's a diaphragm on both of them, and quite often these things rust through and break because of being rusted through before they actually give up internally. So it's a good idea to clean them up and give them a spray paint before they get fitted, or every time you refit them. Starting motors on the right hand side of the engine, right at the back at the flywheel. These things also right down in a damp, nasty place, and quite often get rusty, so this one's just had a bit of a spray paint. Although it's only actually about 2 years old, it's in perfect condition, it's still like new. And I tend to put a little bit of grease on this shaft over here, just so it allows that movement back and forth to keep away rust. If the engine hasn't been used for a long time, the part on the top, which is the solenoid, has a little piston inside of it which sometimes jams up, and you just hear a click when you try and start. That's if your battery's okay. And that's the actual motor itself. And yep, other than that, they're generally trouble-free. This is the thermostat housing that is for the Mercruiser 5.7 litre 350. So on this particular model, what happens is this is the back of the engine, this is the front of the engine. The seawater comes in from the drive leg, the Alpha 1 in this case, comes into here, and there's a divide over here, so it can't actually go any further. So it then turns around, goes in this way, okay, and then there's a hole that allows it to go both ways to the two exhaust risers. But on this side, coming up from the thermostat, which is just over here, is the flow coming back, so any hot water from the engine also has to go to the exhaust risers. So the water can't go both ways over here, so you can't get cold water that way. So just in behind over here, there's a little plug over here you can see. And that is in the lower level, because this is not only split that way, it's also split half and half in that way. So if we turn this thing over, you can actually see that in from this side, which is basically the seawater, comes in through this box and then mixes through and then goes out to this engine. So that's how it gets its cold water, and you can only actually see it, that hole, via taking that plug out and looking up inside there where you see I've put that green arrow.